Hello, stroke warriors everywhere and their families. We have a very special guest today with us, Kristen Christie. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, Kristen? And welcome, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Ralph. I'm so excited to be here with you and your listeners today. So, I live in Colorado Springs and I am a resilient speaker. I've
Ah,
gone through some things in life, right? That we'll
yeah,
talk about here in a little bit.
yeah.
But because of those lessons I've learned, I've really have delved into the resilience aspect of human performance. Not necessarily human performance as an athlete, but human performance of being a productive member of society, if you will.
Very nice. I'm real excited to get into that a little later. But take us back to the day of your stroke and how it changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting to think back to it because at the time I didn't think it was um, something to relish, really. It was 1983. So your listeners don't have to do public math. I was 15, but I'm actually 39 plus shipping and handling now. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Um, 15 years old, we had just moved to Germany. My dad was in the Air Force, and I had been having headaches for a while, like these global headaches. And it felt like a freight train coming. It's far away, and then all of a sudden it's there for 2 hours and then it leaves. But I was also a world class athlete. I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to tennis practice, go to my junior year in high school, and then go to golf practice because it was golf season. And so when my parents took me to the military hospital, the pediatrician just thought it was my schedule. And my parents did not pressure me on the schedule at all. It was something that I loved doing. And so in October of 1983, I played uh, someone who was already on the women's pro tennis circuit, and I beat her. She went on to be the number one tennis player for a while. Uh,
Ah,
and then the second week in October, I won the golf championship for all the American high schools in Germany. And I beat the number one boy by 5 strokes.
oh my gosh,
Can you
that's
tell I
cool.
was competitive? I still
Yeah,
am.
I guess.
So,
Well, what kind of stroke did you have?
yeah,
And how did they finally
yep.
figure it out?
So, first week in October, I had the tennis stroke. Second week in October of 1983, I had the golf stroke. The October 29th of 1983, I experienced a massive stroke as a result of a malformed vein in the center of my brain. So, an AVM, arterial venous malformation. And I knew when it was happening. I told my dad with a very thick tongue, "I'm having a stroke."
Wow.
I don't know how I knew that. I was 15, really had not been around anyone that had had a stroke. I did health class, but it was just, I don't know. I had a really bad crick in my neck. We were away from home in a little German town. And I do remember, I never lost consciousness, but I do remember that the airman in the back of the ambulance, we were at a town where there was a military base. So they sent the ambulance from the military base. And I remember him asking my dad, "Did she take any drugs?" And my dad got so upset, but
That happens so much with younger people. Why did
it
they do that?
does. I think because it can be prevalent.
Well, that's true.
Um, and you and I have met people that, evidently they tried drugs and they had a stroke from it.
Yeah.
But my dad was very upset. I do remember that, even though I couldn't keep my eyes open. I do remember that. The prognosis was if I lived, I would never walk again because the paralysis happened on my right side, my dominant side. Again, 15 years old, just before my 16th birthday, they aren't used to that. Uh, you
Yeah.
know, um, I think that medically in general, but then to think of a small Air Force clinic in a small town in Germany, their visors or their blinders are on. And so I had, I had the stroke 6 days after the Beirut bombing of the Marine Corps barracks. And
Okay.
those Marines from Beirut were at the big army hospital in Germany, which is where they sent me. But those surgeons were so busy doing surgery on the Marines, they didn't have time for a 15-year-old, 16 at that time. I spent my birthday in the hospital.
Mm.
So they sent me to San Antonio. They air-evac'd me to San Antonio for surgery. 9 hour
From
surgery
Germany.
from
Wow.
Germany. Yep. To the Air Force Hospital in San Antonio. And I could not have received any better care anywhere else. It was amazing. But the
Wow.
most amazing part was our community.
Was what?
Our community that came
Yeah.
alongside of us. Um, and it eventually took me a year and a half to learn to walk again. My gait is off. I can't wear high heels, which my foot
Okay.
doctor says is good. You don't need to wear high
You're
heels.
right.
um, and I write with my left hand now.
Oh, you had to teach yourself that too.
Yep. Yep.
How, how did you, I mean, obviously not walking for a year and a half and being 15, I mean, your reaction to all of that, what was that like? I mean, the mental health challenge must have been enormous.
Yes, absolutely. So my identity was misplaced. My identity at that age was based on what I did. I was a world-class athlete. I had scholarships already my junior year in high school. I had this big plan for my life. Um, but because my identity was placed on what I did, not who I was as a person, I went through post-stroke depression, which again, we were in Germany at a military hospital, not used to dealing with young kids with a stroke. We never knew about post-stroke depression. We didn't have that mindset to look for it. And it was when my parents were driving down the Autobahn at 125 miles an hour that I said I want to open up the car door and jump out.
Uh,
And because my body wasn't listening to what my brain, if you pick up a pencil, right, and you're right-handed and you've had a stroke on your right side, you still pick up that pencil with your right hand. It doesn't automatically switch. You've got to
right.
train that brain. And I was frustrated, but when I'm so glad I said something to my parents because I truly wanted to do that. Um, the despair and the darkness that I was going through, brushing my teeth with a different hand. And then I had to take a 3 hour nap.
Yeah.
Just that little thing exhausted me. And so my parents then understood I had physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. I needed another kind of therapy. And so they were very quick to get me into that therapy.
Great. Great. What was some of the most significant challenges you faced during your recovery journey, let's say in the first 5 to 10 years?
Um, the toughest was in
Up
my
in the
head,
head, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In my head. I call it the stinking thinking from the itty bitty shitty bitty between my ears, right? I
Right.
had been one thing and now I could not be that one thing anymore. And I had to find my place again as a different normal, if you will. I missed my friends. I'm an uber extrovert, Ralph. I mean, I can walk into a room if I'm not careful and suck the air right out of an introvert's lungs, right? I love people. And so I wasn't able to go back to school. I had a tutor, a homebound teacher that came and taught me. And it was really tough at that age, 15, 16. I was a teenage girl.
Yeah.
You know, I had clashes with my mom. I, oh, I love my mom. She passed away in 2016. We went through so much as a family. I have a younger brother as well, and my dad, but I would get so tired of her holding on to my belt while I tried to walk, right? It's like, why can't I freaking do this on my own? I've
Yeah.
got the brain, they got the malformed vein out, you know. Um, I think and being a competitive athlete before that, I held myself at higher standards, and I've had to learn that I had to be gentle with myself because I was doing the best that I could.
Being that world class athlete, how did that shape your approach to your recovery and your resilience?
So I obviously was competitive before the stroke. And that is part of my identity, part of my character. So I use that competitiveness. Every time the doctor said, okay, you aren't going to walk again, it's like, I'm going to show you, you
Yep.
know, or I got a no for something. And I came to realize no stands for next opportunity. I had to find that next opportunity, right? But my friends would come over after school and I couldn't just learn to walk again. I had to learn to crawl again. And so we would have crawling races around our house in Germany. And my parents put these plaques, you know, when we're in the hospital, people give us a lot of things, and we're so blessed that they're thinking of us, but a lot of it because my faith plays a big part in my life. A lot of them were plaques with Bible verses, and we would put those on the floor. And as we were racing, so my competitiveness did not go away. And I think that that helped a great deal. My community, the superpower
Yeah.
community.
And your friends helped with that.
Yep, didn't have to do it alone. Um, and so it's channeling, you know, now as a resilience coach and speaker and trainer, I help people find new avenues for their talents, especially in the stroke world.
Yeah.
For instance, if I can tell you a little story.
Of course.
So I was on the National American Heart and Stroke Association board, very involved in that, and locally here in Colorado Springs. And I received a phone call one day from a mom. She had a 19-year-old son who had a D1 football scholarship. So going off to, you know, college football. And he evidently had tried heroin for the first time and had a stroke, a massive stroke from that, and was in a wheelchair. And she asked me to meet with him. And so I went over to their house and I met with him, and you could see on his face just the he had no purpose, right? No passion. No, it was just a dull, just somber look on his face. And I sat down with him, and I said, "So Jake, what did you like to do before the stroke?" I said, "I love football." And I said, "Do you know how to play football now?" And he said, "Lady, I'm sitting in a freaking chair. What do you think?" And I said, pointed to my head, "Do you know how to play football?" And he got the idea that knowing is not physical, it's mental. And he said, "I've memorized every playbook since I was 6 years old." So he got a big fat no, right, from the universe with the stroke. Next opportunity. He couldn't find his next opportunity. He couldn't find new avenues for his talents. So we got together and did it together, and we got him a volunteer football coaching position at the local Parks and Rec for a second grade football team.
Fabulous.
His he was sitting straighter in that chair. His face lit up. It was he we helped him find the new avenues for his talents so he could
Yeah.
feel like a protective member of society.
That's
and not
fantastic.
wallow in that victimhood. He's doing great now, still in the wheelchair, but married and has kids and still coaching football. And the
Oh,
beauty of
that's
that
fantastic.
too is those second graders came to understand that someone who is maybe differently able than they are still has things to teach them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you, how did you, well, there's a couple areas that I want to touch on that, well, and the basis of it is, 9 years post-stroke to this past October. Um, it took 6.5 years before I got off a walker or a cane. And then my recovery became remarkable. They always told me, this is good as it's going to get. And again, I've got an athletic background as well, not world class, but I said, yeah, watch this. I was so angry, I would, go through that. Where were the pivotal moments for you or realizations that changed your perspective on adversity?
I will say, being a woman of faith, um, in church, it was about 6 months after the stroke, and the sermon was on Romans 5:3-5. Rejoice in your struggles. I'm like, what the heck are they saying? Right?
Yeah.
Rejoicing in my struggles. Well, it doesn't say rejoice in your struggles as you're going through them, right? That's not what that means. But rejoice in your struggles, for that creates perseverance. I like to use resilience. Um, and resilience creates character. Again, it gets back to our identity. What kind of character do we have? I think competitiveness is still a character, is one of
I
my,
do too.
you know. Um, and then character creates hope. And I
Yep.
add to it, because there's hope for tomorrow, there is power in today.
And they didn't give us much hope in the beginning, did they?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No.
If it wasn't for our families, I don't know if we'd have any,
Yeah.
or ourselves, right?
Right. And I know my parents were wondering, what side of the family did this come from? Who caused it? That all those thinking parts.
Yeah, the blame
Um,
game.
and I'm so thankful my parents communicated, because 80% of parents who have a tragedy happen to a child between the ages of 2 and 16 end up divorcing.
Oh my
80% divorce
gosh.
rate, because I think they don't communicate the right way, or they're trying to blame themselves or someone else. It's something, I was just born with it.
Yeah,
And I learned some great lessons that I could go and help tutor other people through their lessons, whether it's stroke or whatever adversity. But then um, those lessons really helped me in a huge adversity that I went through later in life, too.
yeah. What message do you hope to convey to those facing similar struggles about the power of perseverance?
Yeah. The power of perseverance is your choice. You have to choose to take it. Um, Resilience are skills to learn. So think about all those little skills you learn, just like a foreign language or cooking, that build up to that. I just heard someone mention that really resilience is that space between the not knowing and the knowing, and you
Yeah,
build on that resilience. Do not do life alone. Have your cheer squad, people that will celebrate the smallest celebrations and wins with you, but will also be there when news is not so good. We like to say we want to laugh together, but I want to encourage people to cry together too. It's so important. Be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best that you can with the tools that you have. and really there's courage inside, and it takes other people to help you gain that courage. Um, I speak in acronyms as a military spouse now and as a military child growing up. There is hope because there's hope for tomorrow. There's power in today. Hope stands for hold on, pain eases. The E does not stand for end. It
Yeah.
eases, it ebbs and flows. And it also stands for help one person every day.
You speak about the emotional battlefield. What's this mean to you, and how can people navigate it?
I use the term battlefield, again, being a military spouse and all. But if you think about life, right, we have good times and we have bad times, and it ebbs and flows. But I talk about leadership on the emotional battlefield because even as leaders, and if anyone asks you a question, you're a leader. So some of your listeners may be saying, I'm not a leader. Yes, if people ask you a question, you are a leader. But it's we're going to go through other adversities, whether it's related to a stroke or not. Um, and it's an emotional battlefield, and we have to arm ourselves with resilience and courage and hope, um, and empathy. We've got to have our battle buddies with us.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask next. What's that? What's that mean?
Ah. So in the military, battle buddies are specifically the Air Force. We call them wingmen.
Okay.
Um, it's just it's those people next to you that are part of your team, whether it's personal or professional, and they've got your back. I mean, they're going to go out on that battlefield, whatever, if it's life, the emotional battlefield, or the actual
Right.
battlefield, and they aren't thinking about themselves. They're thinking about the team. And so it's a team, life is a team effort.
Doesn't
And
doesn't self-compassion play a role in that too?
yes, it's part of that being gentle with yourself and getting rid of the itty bitty shitty committee between your ears, right? There's a saying, Ralph, that, and I don't know who said it, but I use it a lot. If you had a friend who talked to you the way you sometimes talk to yourself, how long would that person stay your friend? Not very long, huh?
Wow, that's incredible.
So this is another acronym that relates to that. It's JOMO, JOMO, joy of missing out, instead of FOMO, fear of missing out, right? There are
Right.
some times where you're trying to help people, and if they start bringing you down, it's okay to step away. I always say God put them in my life and me in their life for a season and a reason. The season's over, and I say, God, put them in the person that is supposed to help them, because I'm not the person supposed to help them, because it's hurting my mental health.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a really interesting post on one of the socials this morning. People asking if I've changed, and it shows a picture of somebody cutting a link between them and another person and saying, no, I just got rid of all the negative in my life.
Yep. Yep. And it's hard to do, especially
Oh, yeah.
if you have compassion and empathy and all that. But we can only do the best that we can when we're in a good place. And we surround ourselves with people who care about us and who will be that cheerleader and sit in the deep dark hole. Oh, we all have Eeyore days. It's when they're extended Eeyore days, like post-stroke depression.
Right.
Um,
Stroke fatigue.
yeah.
Yeah. Is build, I don't, I'm not a fan of this word, but I understand it. It's mindfulness. How does that mindfulness and empathy play such a big role in your recovery?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that being present, right, is mindfulness, being present. In my recovery, I had to really think about what I was doing because my right hand wasn't working. I had to think and be present to pick up that toothbrush with my left hand, or put the toothbrush down on the counter to take the toothpaste with my left hand. In essence, I was one-handed.
Right,
That is what mindfulness or being present truly is. And even today, some of the trainings, I tell people, do things with the opposite hand, with your opposite dominant hand, because you really have to think about it. And we go through life on autopilot a lot of times, right? I mean, how many times have we been in the car and we park somewhere and we're like, how the heck did I get here? Right? It's just
exactly.
autopilot. But when you can be mindful and present in the now and really think about it, I think our perseverance and our resilience gets even stronger. It's like focusing. The world is so noisy, right?
Yeah,
Our heads are so noisy. I have a virtual background because I don't want you guys seeing my office with all the paper on the floor, and it's just I'm a clutter bug. That happened after my stroke too. I used to be every Saturday morning, strip the bed,
me
military,
too.
and now it's like our house. We got our kitchen counters redone, and my son said, "Why?" Because we can't see the kitchen counters. Gotten better after he said that. I've gotten better. um but it's part of that TBI. So but I really think being present is important, and taking time. We have to be intentional. We
Yeah,
have 1,440 minutes in every day, Ralph. How much of that do we take for ourselves to be present, to be focused on what we want, and how do we get there, and who do we bring along with us to lift us up, not to drag us down?
yeah, exactly. I loved one of the phrases you just used too. What a positive way of thinking of it. Opposite dominant hand.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, both hands are dominant, and although you've got the problem from the stroke,
Right.
well, just an interesting thing for me to think about. Um, we've got a lot to cover with you. So I think I'd like to do is let's do another show
Okay.
so that we can share some more ideas. I love what you've said so far. It's incredible. You brought tears to my eyes once. So anything you want to add for today's session?
I just want to encourage people to be gentle with themselves, forgive themselves for you know, what they do while trying to survive. Um, and find someone or a group of people that really lift you up. Um, Ralph, you have developed a community that helps people in their wellness journey. So kudos to you for taking a trauma in your life and adversity and making it worthwhile for other people. Because I bet you heal as much as you're healing other people, right?
Yes, exactly. That once I found other people with strokes, other stroke warriors. I say a stroke warrior is a choice. You can be a stroke survivor or a stroke warrior. So I mean, I love doing this. I wish I would have had it, and I think that's why we both do what we do.
Absolutely.
So you want to wrap up for today? Just give us how they get in contact with you or find out more about what you do.
Yeah, I have a website. It's www.KristenChristieCares.com. You can spell Kristen and Christie any way you want, and it should come up. There aren't many Kristen Christies around.
Right.
And feel free to give me a call. My number is 620-304-HOPE 4673. And I'm on
Cool.
LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook as well.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for your time today, and I look forward to our next meeting.
Yes. Thank you, Ralph.